Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I am Tony, your host, and this is the place where we talk about all things strange and unexpected in our reality. One of my favorite times of the year is Halloween, and that is a time where I like to look back and revisit at all the different books, stories, and movies that have all the fun and typical scary and creepy characters that are associated with Halloween time. And so as I was getting ready to plan for episodes for this fall, I happened to be looking around and I ran across a book that the minute I saw it, I fell in love with the cover of it. And I thought to myself as I read the title, I want to interview that author. And so I'm very happy to have her here today. And before I bring her into the conversation, I just want to say a couple more things. And that is one of my favorite movies of all time for the Halloween season is the 1999 movie Interview with a Vampire that featured Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, and other cool actors. I really loved the way that they portrayed that and the way they handled it in New Orleans. And so I always wondered, in that time period in history, what would it really have been like if there were vampires in New Orleans? And so I don't know how realistic the movie was, but I always wondered about that. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have our person here today coming in. He was an author for this wonderful book, Marita Crandall. And the name of the book is New Orleans Vampires, History and Legend. And so now, once again, before I let her get involved, I just want to say a little bit about her. Now, Marita has done some amazing things in her life. In a way, she's had two really cool halves of a life. And she previously lived in California, where she had an extensive background in the corporate world, where she spent time as an ad designer, as a staff writer at a newspaper, a director of marketing for a couple or three companies, and the president of marketing in the banking industry. But then something happened. She got exposed to New Orleans, and she was hooked. She felt drawn to the place, and now she lives in New Orleans with her husband, Steve, and two dogs, Zulu and Voodoo. And I love those names. I'm going to ask you about that later. And she's not done yet, right? She's still doing things there in New Orleans, and I'm going to ask her to tell us a little bit about that today. So with all that, I would like to welcome Marita Crandall to the call and to the interview and say thank you very much for being with us today. How are you doing, Marita?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It is awesome. I'm excited. And New Orleans, is it getting pretty hot out there right now?
Right now it's very hot. It has been raining a lot though. We're going to have a wet summer, so that helps us a little bit with the humidity. I mean, well, not with the humidity, with the heat. But it's hot already. Last summer, it was really hot. It felt like 115 for 2 weeks in a row. So I'm hoping to not have that happen this year.
Yeah. Now, just for the benefit of the audience, we are actually doing this interview in June, and it's going to air closer to Halloween, of course. But so that's why when we talk about the start of summer, that's why. So, how long have you lived in New Orleans now?
23 years and loving it. I love everything about it. I mean, I pinch myself sometimes still that I found this place, or it found me.
Right. And I can't wait to hear about that. That's so cool. So there's a couple other things you're doing there in New Orleans. I mean, you're an author as well, but I did run across some other things like a speakeasy, a cafe, a store. You have a very cool website. Can you take a couple minutes and talk to the audience and I about those cool things you have going on?
So I had the boutique first. Boutique de Vampire is my first business. I opened that 21 years ago, and on January 1st, on New Year's Eve, New Year's Eve actually, and then we were open New Year's Day, like to the public. And it's an amazing little place. We have about 130 artists that make things just for us. And every movie or TV show comes to see me and ask me about something. Twilight bought a necklace from us that was in the last Twilight movie. It was on all the billboards and everything. It was worn by the New Orleans vampire, Garrett. And then the show, the originals, came to me, the writers did, before they started the show, and they actually used my information for history. My book wasn't quite out yet, but I was working on it. And so I gave them all the background, and they used the Casket Girls for episode 10, and that's our biggest, strongest legend. So that was really cool, you know. And then True Blood, we actually here in my new place, we have Eric's crossbow, and we have Vampire Bill's coffin. And so that's the one he was killed in by Sookie. And that's over here. I might show it to you if I could take you on a walk later on.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
So I have the boutique, and that was really the beginning of my business. And then during the pandemic, well, no, before that, then 7 years ago, I really wanted a speakeasy because I was a bartender for 11 years on Bourbon Street, and I had a pretty big following of customers. And my shop is so tiny, and they wanted to come hang out, and there was nowhere to be. And so I kept thinking, God, it would be so cool if I had a vampire speakeasy. And I had my eye on this place, but I wasn't ready. Finally, when I was ready, I did a marketing plan, and luckily the gentleman who owns the business downstairs agreed. So you have to walk through a crowded jazz club, you have to have a password, and when you get upstairs, it's like a Paris salon in the 1920s, but vampires and witches run it. It's beautiful. And we have a balcony overlooking Bourbon. It's really a magical, magical place. You can be a member. We have it's a private club as well as a speakeasy for my customers. And then during the pandemic, the restaurant attached to my little shop became available. And it's just in the perfect location. It's a beautiful little restaurant. And I had to beg them to let me run it because they didn't think I was capable. And I just told them, look, I'm going to open in 1 month. And it should have been a reality show. It is honestly phenomenal what myself and our chef was capable of, what we were capable of doing. I still can't believe we did it. We sit down sometimes and talk about it because it's almost impossible what we did. We got the keys. I hired him on November like 28th or something. I got the keys on November 29th, and he ripped the kitchen apart, which it needed. It was disgusting. And I ripped the front of the house apart. I had built the bar myself. I changed the floor. We bought tables and everything. We hired staff. 2 weeks later, he did a menu test for my husband and I, and it was so good. I thought, my God, we are going to have to up our game a little bit and become like semi-fine dining instead of just family dining. And so we did. And even our silverware is in theme. It's brass, and we put it in the shape of a cross so that mortals are protected, but also vampires are protected because they can't touch silver. So we tried to put in as many vampire details as possible. Our napkins are folded in the shape of bats, and our food is excellent. Because of the pandemic, so many chefs had nowhere to go. And so I kind of rescued my chef in a way, but I got really lucky. I hired a chef to help me hire him because I didn't know anything about the restaurant business. And so I let him run the kitchen completely. I had a couple ideas that I really wanted to be part of the restaurant. I had to have fried deviled eggs because I'd never heard of that before, and I kind of invented them during the pandemic for my husband. And blackened alligator, and then I wanted something for vegetarians. And so the rest of it he does completely, and he is amazing. I mean, I can get people there because of the theme, but he gets people coming back because our food is so, so good. So that was 3.5 years ago. And then we discovered that we were so popular, and we can't close at all because I closed once for a private party, and this little girl was devastated. Her mother brought her for her birthday, and they were all dressed up and ready to come to the restaurant. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, we're closed today for a private party. And they had driven all the way from Alabama, and I mean, it broke my heart. So the Vampire Cafe is so small that we just are never closed. We're always open. We're open at 9 a.m. until midnight, 7 days a week. And then I found our new place. We opened April 1st. And by the way, we opened the boutique, potions, and the Vampire Cafe all on New Year's Eve. It was just total coincidence. It just happened. And so then when this couldn't open on New Year's Eve, I was really disappointed. But April Fool's Day is my favorite day of the year. And so it fell into perfect place. So that's when we opened the Apothecary. So it's a vampire-themed restaurant, but it's an apothecary-themed as well. And apothecaries were the first pharmacies. And in New Orleans, we happen to have the first pharmacy in the United States. It was the gentleman who owned it. It was the absolute first pharmacist. He took a 3-hour oral test, and where the pharmacy is now, it's a museum, and we do work with them as well. But we want to bring that history back to New Orleans because it's such a beautiful, rich history and the beginning of bitters and so many things. So we bring all that into our cocktails, and we have cocktails that change color in front of your eyes. We have all of our food has herbs or flowers locally sourced from farmers, or we grow a lot in our courtyard garden as well. So it's a really magical place. And here we have tarot. So it's a real pharmacy for vampires. We have psychic, healing. We also have a fangsmith on site, so you can get your fangs.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Sorry.
You have a what on site? Okay, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So it takes a half an hour, and you leave with your fangs on. It's just one tooth that pops over the tooth, and they're beautiful. He does them for the films and everything too, and they last forever. My husband, I was born with my fangs, but my husband's had his for like almost 20 years now. So wow. Yeah, they're good, very nice quality. So that's my little vampire empire. And I have a little tiny secret hotel too. And then we just opened up another super duper, super duper, super, super secret speakeasy. So if you find that one, you're lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. You might have to be a vampire to get into that one, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a dangerous one. Yeah.
It's like these things were meant to happen, the way they rolled out with short time frames. And then all of the, most of them, all but one, right, on January 1st. That's cool. Yeah. It's like it was meant to be.
It's really crazy, yeah. I mean, and really, truly by chance. I didn't have to force it or anything. It just was, okay, we got like the restaurant. We got the keys November 1st. We were done December 31st. We had a party on New Year's Eve for all of our just family and friends. And it was still all blacked out because we weren't allowed to. So it was a curfew for the pandemic. We had to close at 8:00. So people came in through my shop, and then they left after 1:00, just secretly, Yeah. But so that night we took all the paper down because it had been all blacked out windows, and it was really a weird feeling. It was the first time that I felt really naked, like everybody could see in. It was kind of creepy. But and the first day we were open, we were hugely. I cannot believe all the people that came on New Year's Day to our restaurant. And a lot of it came from our marketing because I had been doing a lot of promotion, the Vampire Cafe. We were dying to have you in for a bite, come see us. And we were like just slammed the first day. And it never slowed down. It's amazing. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Great concept, fun environment, and with your marketing background, put it all together.
That's and a great chef.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. That's what keeps them coming back too, right? The environment and the food, yeah. So you basically, you feel like the town was just dying for something like that? Because it sounds like they just wrapped you around their arms and you wanted it.
Yeah, and the speakeasy. People like secrets and they like paranormal. And so, I can't believe more people haven't done something because the ghost tours and vampire tours are so popular. But then once people are done with the tour, there's nowhere to go. Well, now there is. There's lots of places. They're all mine. There's no witch cafe or voodoo cafe I really encourage somebody to do it because that's what people come here for. And so, I think I really did when we got this place, the Apothecary, that's where I am right now. Mm-hmm. It used to be called Reverend Zombie's Voodoo Shop, and it was hugely popular. So when they called me and said they were leaving and that, if I wanted to open up something here, I thought it's too good to be true. In fact, I have to tell you, my husband and I were driving through the French Quarter. We passed by Potions, our speakeasy on Bourbon, and we're 1 block away from the cafe. So then we passed my little vampire shop, and then we passed the cafe. And I said to my husband, man, we are so lucky that everything's so close together. It makes it so easy to manage. And also we're right in the heart of the French Quarter. We're literally right behind St. Louis Cathedral, which is the heart. And I said, we're so lucky. And then we made a curve down this street, St. Peter, which is on the other side of the cathedral. And we passed Reverend Zombies, and it was always packed. It's right across from Pat O'Brien's and Preservation Hall, which has a line out the door all the time. And I said that that's the best location in the quarter. And then a week later, and he agreed with me, a week later I get the phone call, hey, we're leaving, and I called my husband, I said, this is amazing, it's unbelievable. I never thought they would leave. So for a second, I thought, you know what? Maybe I will keep it voodoo and we'll do a voodoo cafe and have, because there's something about being in a voodoo shop. You want to linger with all the stuff in the, hanging from the ceiling and all the bebes and, all the voodoo stuff. But I thought about it more, and I don't know enough about voodoo. I know more than a lot of people, but I think because voodoo is an actual religion and a very good one, I would hate to, even though I could have hired people that know more, I just felt like there would be a lot of criticism, about, well, who do you think you are? You don't know anything. You're not, from the voodoo religion. And so I thought about that, and I thought, you know what, I might just stick to vampires. And so that's what I did. It hasn't been easy though. The Vampire Cafe was instant. The Apothecary is taking a while to get off the ground. It's a lot bigger. We have a beautiful courtyard though, and so this is our private party place. So if you are going to New Orleans and you want a private party, I mean, we have tea and leaf readings, really nice for bachelorette parties, and you do learn how to read your own tea leaves. We have amazing tarot readers and palm and every kind of psychic thing there is. We're about to do a seance and have that be part of our curriculum. We also have now, I'm building like a curriculum. So we have a gentleman who's going to be doing tarot classes. So it's tea and tarot. You get a cup of our vampire tea, and you actually get a Deviant Moon tarot deck, which is such a beautiful deck. And then he teaches you the history of tarot and how to read several different spreads. And it's a nice, like 1.5 hour class. And then we're going to have we're doing the seance. We have regular tea leaf readings. We're also going to have some magic lessons, because every Friday night here, we have a magic show at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock by Dr. Joe Dalgo. It's called Dr. Joe Dalgo's, what is it called? Diabolical Delusions. And it's awesome. It's all apothecary themed, right on spot. And now he's going to teach a class as well. So I'm trying. we're getting there.
A whole experience, like memorable, wonderful experiences. Yeah. That's cool. I've never been to New Orleans, but
oh my God,
when I go, I'm going to have to swing by and check out what you have. That sounds
it's an amazing place. I mean, there's so much culture. It's from pirates to voodoo to slavery and the cuisine. I mean, there's just so much. You feel it when you're walking on the street here. Today I took a cruise. I was just walking around because I felt like I needed a little culture. And I walked through Jackson Square and I had a cocktail in the square. And it just, I was looking at the cathedral and thinking about when I was walking in front of the cathedral through Pirates Alley, I was just thinking about the stones that are there. They're the original stones that people walked on in the 1700s. And Jackson Square, as I was sitting there, there's a beautiful jazz band out front. And I was just watching it thinking they used to have hangings there, public hangings. And I was thinking about how serious everything used to be in the past. And now it's like all whimsical and there's jazz there. And I would love to go back, like maybe, I don't know, maybe a decade at a time, a decade a day, and just see how it progressed. I did find a picture not that long ago, because I am a historian and I've written several history books, and I found some amazing things in my research. But a couple of pictures that are very notable from New Orleans and also in New York, actually. I was looking at the people, and every single person was dressed nicely and had a hat on, always a hat, women and men. And not one person was overweight, not one. And I mean, in these crowds and crowds of people, I guess life was harder then. And so there wasn't as much time to sit on the couch and eat McDonald's, whatever. But it was just remarkable to think about how different life was then. And, when people were walking, now we're walking thinking about totally different things. I think life was much more serious back in the day.
Yeah, I often think, how cool would it be if there was a way to go back in time and just experience some of those things in some of these special places? It really would be untouchable. How cool that would be.
It would be very difficult, though, especially for women. Women. I wrote a book about Josie Arlington, who was a madam here during Storyville time, and I learned a lot about the city and women's perils. I mean, and I never felt that way my entire life. I always thought, all these women's rights people, and I'm like, come on, I never felt prejudiced against in any job I ever had or anything. But then as I was doing research, I realized how stupid I am because women went through so much, not being able to have their own careers or vote or anything. And so a lot of really strong women paved the way. And Josie Arlington was a madam, but she was a pioneer for women because she had a huge successful business that wasn't just about prostitution. It was also about socializing. It became her brothel. She actually had the worst brothel in the French Quarter, fights all the time until her lover killed her brother. It changed her overnight. And she went away for a while and then came back and opened up the palace of all brothels. No cussing allowed. Everybody was treated very respectfully. And it became a place to go have green hour, which became happy hour. It was green hour because there was no wine during the famine. And so absinthe became very popular. So it's called green hour. Anyway, back to the street though. Like I said, when I was walking down the street, all that history, somehow being here, you feel it. You can't explain it. Even when I didn't know about it, you just feel different when you're here. So I'd be curious to see how you feel when you come.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you're talking about this. It was one of the questions I have. We may dive a bit more into it, but yeah, I've heard that it's a special place that you can feel things, and it's just got its own spirit about it, which is really cool. So,
It really does. Yeah.
well, while we're on it, can you tell us a little bit about just New Orleans in general? Like, we've heard about all the cool things you're doing now. There was this city that pulled you in, New Orleans. Can you talk about what you see, how you feel, and just the environment there? Could you do that for us?
So yeah, I came here on business, and it was funny. I was an executive, and my company actually rented me a convertible, and they put me up at the Sheraton. And the room I think was like $275, and that was 24 years ago.
Wow.
And I thought, God, I don't want to be in this room. And so I left the car there, parked the entire time. I was here for 10 days, and I went. My friend that I worked with told me, well, while you're there, you have to go to bottom of the cup tea room and have your cards read. And I thought, okay. And before I went to the convention center for what I was here for, I walked through the quarter and I was going to look for a bed and breakfast where I could stay. And so I saw bottom of the cup, and it was only like 10 o'clock in the morning. And I asked the guy, if he knew any place, and he said, I do. He said, why don't you go have your cards read? And while you're getting your cards read, I'll look for a place. I'll have a place for you when you come out of the reading. And I thought, God, I kind of wanted to do that at nighttime. And I said, okay, I'll just do it. So I went into the reading, which was actually very interesting. And when I came out, he had a beautiful place for me that was owned by Dick Merrill of Merrill Lynch. And he had just bought it. It was like a beautiful, it's an art gallery now, but it was a several room, bed and breakfast. In the back were maybe 2 rooms on the top, bigger rooms, and on the bottom, maybe 3. And in the front was an antique shop. And so he could only accommodate me though for 5 nights. And then I had to miss a night, and then I could stay there again. But he said I could keep all my stuff there. Like he would have housed the luggage and everything. So I said, I'll take it. And it was so much, I was saving my company like $100 a night, and it was great. So I left my car at the Sheraton and I went there. And I mean, just when I stepped foot into the quarter, it was like, when I was a kid, my parents took me to Pirates of the Caribbean and Disneyland. And my friend and I wanted to stay. We were like, how do we escape and live here? And that's what I feel like. I feel like this is adult Pirates of the Caribbean. There's the blacksmith shop, and it's almost like Hogwarts, where you go to the witch shop and the vampire shop, and all these little secret bars around. And it's really a fascinating place. And like I said, with the culture, we also have great music. And I noticed I used to rescue dogs like a lot. I've rescued over 650 dogs since I've lived here because it was necessary. And I would go early in the morning before I had to go to work to let the dogs out or whatever I was doing. And I noticed that children here I was living in California at the time, but children here, when they have their school books or whatever at the bus stops, they also have a musical instrument. Almost every one of them. I mean, there's either a big one or a little thing hanging out the back. Almost every child. And being in band in California, you were kind of a nerd. Here, you're a celebrity. and
Wow.
then you end up playing on Bourbon or on, the Square or even the little clubs. It's a part of the culture, and I love it. I really love
That
it.
is cool. That's really special and nice. And so, yeah, people can feel that they can let that part of themselves come out, the music part of themselves, right? That's exciting.
Yeah.
Um, the so let me shift for just a minute. This is going to be a silly question, I think, kind of, but one of the thoughts I had was, what inspired you to write about vampires? After hearing all that you're into and how much you love it, it's kind of a stupid question. But let me ask it anyway, because I'm sure somebody is going to wonder this topic, like what spoke to you and why did you do it?
What got me into vampires?
Hmm.
Okay, I'm having a little trouble hearing you because, unfortunately, the music downstairs is really loud.
Gotcha.
Um, so uh, I have always liked vampires, and it was like my go-to for Halloween, Like, but then when I came here, I loved it so much, and I was actually sick to my stomach every time I had to leave. And so on one of my trips, I got a little apartment here, and I thought I would just feel closer to the city. So on the way back, I was on the plane, and I thought, how can I live in New Orleans? So I did a marketing plan for Vampire Wines, bringing them to New Orleans because I had, had it in California, but I'd never seen it here. And so his office was in Beverly Hills, and luckily he agreed with me. And so we've been working together ever since. I actually invented Fangria for him and helped with vampire vodka. And also we have a new absinthe cocktail that has ginger ale and lime, and I worked on the graphics of that. But anyway, so I helped with that. And then I thought, I thought about the city and Interview the Vampire. Anne Rice brought vampires awareness to New Orleans, and I thought maybe I should open up a little vampire shop. And so it was very organic. I didn't like go, okay, this is what I want to do. It just kind of evolved, and then all the other businesses evolved from that. It's really odd because it's almost like I'm not doing it sometimes. Like when that happened with the restaurant, I remember going to work one day thinking, what the hell am I doing? And it wasn't me. It was just happening. It was just happening around me. I mean, I was doing it, but I wasn't like, okay, this is what I'm going to do today. I just did it. It just happened.
Wow.
And same with this place. And, it's really weird. And when I was thinking about writing a novel, which is almost done now, it's pretty epic. It's taken me a while to write because I keep opening businesses. But I have it written. I just have to finish the ending because my agent told me to take 10 characters out. And it's really hard to take 10 characters out of a novel. But I did. And now I just have to rewrite the ending. So it's about the Carter brothers, which is one of our major legends. And I started working on that. And all of a sudden I get a phone call from History Press. And they said if I would be interested in submitting a proposal for a history book about where the vampire legends of the French Quarter came from. And I thought, this is crazy because I'm doing all this research right now about the Carter brothers. So I'm going to get paid to do it. And it's just like one thing after the other just kind of falls into place. It's really amazing. So I'm very
That
lucky. But
is.
no, vampires kind of found me. I just, I thought it was good. And the funny story is, so when I opened up my boutique, my friend said, you have to have a MySpace. And I said, why? Because I have a website. Why do I need a MySpace? And then she said, no, well, no, then I did it. And I was so proud of myself. And then she says, oh, no, Marita, you need Facebook. I'm like, oh my God, like I just did MySpace, right? So I started a Facebook page, and Anne Rice was second in line to be my friend. And I was like,
Wow.
what? And she says, I think we have a mutual friend. And we did, that I didn't even know about. I mean, I didn't know he was her friend too. And his name's Nick Maddox, and he's a really cool guy. Anyway, and we were friends ever since. She was a really good sounding board and just a lovely, really smart lady. Like I'm really honored I got to know her, and that she
Wow.
found me. It's so crazy,
Yeah. Yeah. She
crazy.
she she felt that same thing for your interest. She was like loving that too, I guess, right? That's amazing. So you've kind of started talking a little bit about this. The research that you've done, can you talk to us about how you approached research? I mean, you say you're a historian, so I understand it's probably natural for you, but for people who are interested in learning about things like this, other places too, how did you approach your research for vampires and the legends and lore there in New Orleans?
Yeah. I love doing research. It's one of my favorite things to do. In fact, whenever I was done writing for a while, and I thought, God, I was getting this hankering to dive back into doing research for a book. So I do everything. We're very lucky here in New Orleans. There's many universities. I went for my Josie Arlington book and for the vampire book. I went to Tulane University. I went to UNO. They have beautiful libraries, and also our public library here is amazing. And that's where I found a gold mine when it came to the Josie Arlington book, because when her brother was murdered by her lover, there was a court case. And when I found the court records, I just got chills hearing her voice, because she was being interviewed. So it was all the court reporter's transcripts. So I actually got to hear Josie's voice, like things that she said. And that was amazing. And I learned a lot from that report because it's all factual. It's right there.
Wow.
And I found too, when I was doing research for the vampire book on the casket girls, I was very disappointed because there were people that were notarized as historians, and same with the Josie Arlington book, actually, who just took other historians' word for it. And it would be easy to do, to read a book and this guy said the casket girls, came over this year on this ship. Well, a lot of it wasn't true. A lot of what I read was not true, but I delved deeper in, and where I found a lot of stuff, if you're a researcher, is the footnotes. Whenever there's a footnote, you want to research, like, why is there a footnote? What did he find out from that? And what didn't he publish, And that's where I got a lot of my information about the Casket Girls. And I really my goal was to find out the first time they were actually called the Casket Girls. And it was many, many years ago, and it comes from France. So the Casket Girls, that's our biggest legend. But they were young women that were brought from France to help populate the city with a better class of people. And it had happened before in Canada. The king used someone else to send women from Canada, from Canada to, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, from France to Canada to populate Canada. And now this time it was to populate the United States. Well, they did a really poor job. They hired a guy named John Law, who was an asshole, and he got just money per head, right? And so he didn't care who he was sending. And that's part of the richness of our culture, but also part of the detriment of our culture, because he sent just prisoners and hookers and hoodlums and really misled a lot of people, like German colonizers. He lied to them and told them there was rich land. And when they got here, they couldn't even make butter, it was a devastating territory. And so a lot of people came here with this promise that he gave them, and it was, horrible. So anyway, the Casket Girls were sent over here. They really weren't sent by the Ursuline nuns. I mean, there's so much wrong with the legend, but in my book, I don't ruin the legend. I just explain the truth, and I let the legend live on because it's so much more fun to do that. But I did find the actual list of girls that were sent over, and it's quite lengthy. It's a lot more than I thought it was going to be, and many of them were very, very young, and they were to be wed. They never really made it to New Orleans. They went to Dauphin Island, and that's where they were married off. But a really cool part of the legend is there's a woman named Sister Gertrude who was in charge of the Casket Girls, and she, in the notes from the historians, there was actual horrible, diabolical trick that she played on them. But we'll never know what it is because I looked everywhere and nowhere did it say what she actually did. But she was immediately sent back to France right after she married them off and dealt with. So in my rendition of the legend, she was sent back in cat form because there's always a black cat around the convent, and to watch over the Casket Girls for eternity. That's her punishment. And so may I show you something real quick?
Yes.
So this is a picture I had done. Let's see if I can make this work. What there? I don't know if you can see it though, but let's see. Hold on. So these are the girls are finally done. They want to get out of the attic, so they're attacking the nun. But there's a cat, right? I'm going to show you. Hang on.
Okay.
There's a little black cat right here. Can you see that? Okay. Anyway. So there she is, and now then the Casket Girls get out of the attic, and this is them out of the attic.
Wow.
Kind of cool. And there's a little black cat walking right here. I don't know. It's probably hard for you to see. Anyway, that's Sister Gertrude. And so now we have her shadow held captive here in our, can you see that or not?
It's dark. It's hard to see.
It's dark. Yeah, I can't make it any lighter either. Rats. Well, there's this, I don't know. I can get closer. Nah.
I can see a little bit.
A little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, we put that there, and then Vampire Bill's coffin's in here too, but it's really dark. Yeah. Sorry. Anyway.
No, that's fine. Thanks for trying.
Yeah, I try to incorporate the legends wherever I can, and it's so much fun. But that is a great legend. So anyway, yeah, I really look at, you know, I keep going. Like if there's a question, I try to find out the answer, because if you just take it like, oh, he said that, you know, you're gonna make a big mistake as a researcher.
Yeah, and it sounds like if you give in to that too early, you miss out on nuggets of cool information, right? So that's what you did, is you dug in a little bit to get more information.
Yes.
Yeah.
We also have here the New Orleans Historic Collection, which is unbelievable. When you get there, there's lockers, and you have to put everything that you have in the locker, and they just give you a pencil. And then you go upstairs, and the first time you're there, you have to watch a video of how to handle ancient documents. And then once that's done, then you ask them for the books that you want, and they go get them for you in this beautiful library. It's all wood, and upstairs and downstairs, books everywhere. I never want to leave when I'm there. It's amazing. Really, really cool. So
That's cool.
Research is fun.
That's awesome. What do you think is the biggest thing that people misunderstand about New Orleans?
Misunderstand about New Orleans?
Yeah, what do you think is the biggest thing people misunderstand about New Orleans? Is there anything?
I think, I think there's different kinds of people. So New Orleans isn't for everybody. And some people come here and they're like, oh, it's, I don't know, it's all about drinking, or they're just not investigating enough. They're not going to the right places. I very rarely go on Bourbon Street unless it's to go to my little speakeasy. And they're really, unfortunately, there used to be really great music on Bourbon, but that's gone away. And so now the jazz clubs are like kind of intermittent. There's one on Charters that my girlfriend owns. It's amazing. If you come to the city, Mahogany Jazz Hall, best music everywhere than anywhere. And people come and sit in all the time. And then we are above Fritzl's Jazz Club, which is also an amazing little jazz club. So they're around, but it's not like it used to be. And when I first moved here, I really wanted to help the blues scene and the jazz scene. And I tried, but the musicians really let me down. There's a lot of drugs, in that industry, and it wasn't my scene. And so I went with the vampire route instead. So I think, there might be, misunderstanding about that you just come here to drink, because there's so much more to do. And even outside of the French Quarter, there's swamp tours and beautiful plantations, and God, there's so much to do. And there's always festivals. I mean, every time you turn around, there's a festival. Alligator Fest, Tomato Fest, Strawberry Fest. They had Mac and Cheese Fest. It's crazy. And Jazz Fest is amazing. We just had the Rolling Stones here for Jazz Fest. And I'm the luckiest person in the world, because my friends own a house right across from where the stage was. So I didn't have to fight the crowds. I just went to their balcony and drank some wine and had some cheese and watched Mick Jagger. And man, he looks amazing, performed amazingly. Like, I couldn't get over it. Really great concert. So there's all, there's the music, there's so much. So I think that would be the biggest misconception, is that, people don't know about, they don't come here for the culture, they would come here for the partying. And I would not just do that.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great to know. People, when you come, enjoy all that it has to offer there. Don't take the shortcut and just go grab drinks and call it the weekend, right? Do more.
Right.
I love that.
There's also, one of my favorite things to do is go take a streetcar and go to St. Charles, go up St. Charles into the Garden District, where all the big mansions are. And there's some that have been turned into hotels. And the Columns Hotel is one of my favorites. So you can actually be in this beautiful mansion. You can sit on the veranda and watch the streetcars go by while you're sipping a cocktail, or you can go into the bar, which is where they actually filmed the movie Pretty Baby. So it has a kind of a brothel feel to it. It's a really cool place. And my husband and I usually stay there one night every holiday season, like around Christmas. The rooms are beautiful, and it's just a nice thing to do,
That's awesome. Something different here. I'm going to ask you, before I get into your book, I want to talk about your book in just a minute, but voodoo. Voodoo's a real thing there, right? It's a real religion in that area. And is it visible to you or to people in that area? Like, do you see, other churches, you see actual church. Is it visible?
So it is, like I said, I know actually more about voodoo than probably most people do because I did a lot of research, but not enough to where I would, profess to know a lot about it. But I did do some research that if you go to my website, which you'll be sharing with them, if you go to the research tab for two things, one for the casket girls, because in my book, they wouldn't let me publish some things. And one of them was my experience going to the Ursuline convent attic. I'm one of the few people in the world that's been in the attic. And that's actually what I built this room to resemble. And that was a remarkable day. And there's pictures and everything. But also there's something I found in the newspaper here from the 1700s when the paper was still in French. And I translated it into English. And it was a reporter who snuck into one of Marie Laveau's voodoo ceremonies. And Marie Laveau actually wasn't there that night. I think it was her daughter that was there. But it was a pretty remarkable story. So, voodoo is, like I said, a religion. And the reason I know more about it is, like, everything I see here is more commercial. I met a gentleman that was from Africa, and he told me a lot of things that happened to him in his life. And I can tell you one quick story that is like real voodoo. He knew a guy named Amos, and they were walking to school one day. And before the school, they always picked oranges to make money. And so they came up in the field, they saw this tree that was like flourishing, and there was another one that was kind of dying. And Amos said to my friend, I can make the spirit of that tree go into that tree. And my friend said, okay, whatever. He didn't really believe in it. And so he sat down kind of Indian style and was not talking out loud, but was, talking to the tree internally. And then my friend forgot about it. And they went to pick and they went to school. And then on their way back home, he said, see, I told you. And the one tree was swooping down, the big flourishing one. And the other one, it wasn't, huge or anything. But he said he saw like a pep in it, And that's just one day. And he has so many stories, and some are really remarkable. I'm actually working on a book about it that is going to be historical fiction called a Bhikkhu. It means born to die. And it has to do with his childhood. And he's now the head of a hospital in Portland, Oregon, or Seattle. I'm sorry, one of those right there. And it's kind of a big leap for him because, I found out about this a long time ago. I was in San Antonio when I met him. And we just sat and talked for like 2 days straight. And I was mesmerized by all these stories. And so I said, are you sure you don't mind me like using your real name and everything? And he said, no. So I've tried to do it a couple times, and I always run into snafus, like my life gets busy, but that book is on the back burner. And so I would like to, write it. But no, there's so much to voodoo. It's basically the worst thing people can take from voodoo is that it's this evil religion and that you should take a voodoo doll and wish people harm. That's the worst thing you can do because it comes back tenfold. So if you want to get rid of somebody in your life, you wish them well and wish them away. And you can do that with a puppet, with a voodoo doll. You can do that. Like when we were trying to buy a house, and I swear I tried everything. We were having the hardest time. We were in escrow with 6 different houses, and every single time something happened. One was sinking, one was full of Chinese drywall, and we're like, really? It was always right at the last minute, right? And so what is going on? And my realtor said, no, it's happening for a reason. And I wanted to punch her right in the face, but she was right. So we ended up getting the perfect house, and I love her so much. But she actually gave me a book that really helped me too. Anyway, when I was doing this, I ended up building a voodoo doll from scratch for myself. And I put a picture of the house that I really wanted. I put a $100 bill. I put a picture of my dogs playing in a yard, like everything I really saw, And it was not long after that we actually got our house. And it's manifesting. You can do it all different kinds of ways,
Yeah.
And I was so angry, I think, that I wasn't focused. I was focusing on the negative, and then as soon as I focused on the positive and gratitude, practicing gratitude is amazing, and so that is a lot of voodoo is gratitude. So I really hope that people don't think that voodoo is this evil, horrible, how to hurt somebody. It's not. It's not. It's very, very positive religion.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because you're right. I think people only know one little thing they hear, and to get that perspective is valuable. So thank you for sharing that. I really do. Okay, Marita, take our listeners through a little journey through your book. Tell us all about that book.
Okay, so I had opened up the Vampire Cafe, and then I was diving right back into the Carter Brothers. But then, as soon as that all started going, then this came available, and I put the Carter Brothers back on the back burner. And I got frustrated because I'm a writer, and writers write. Like, you just can't stop writing. So I write on napkins, I write on everything, and I write in my sleep. I do, and I wake up and I start. Then I get into it sometimes, and I start writing real sentences. I'm like, stop it, because you're never going to remember this, and I don't remember it, and so it's just a stupid thing to do. But anyway, so I was getting frustrated, and then I thought, you know what? I'd always wanted to write a penny dreadful, and penny dreadfuls were little pamphlets that came out during the Depression in London in the 1800s, and nobody could afford books, and so everybody had no money, no entertainment. So the city came up with this idea to have these penny dreadfuls, and they're little pamphlets, 10 to 12 pages, that are each one is a cliffhanger. It's an ongoing story. And many famous novels became penny dreadfuls, including Sweeney Todd. Sweeney Todd was a penny dreadful. And Varney the Vampire was a penny dreadful. That was one of the very first vampire things ever written. Anyway, I thought, let me write one for the French Quarter that has all of our legends built, together. So I started writing that, and then every week one would come out, and there'd be a recipe from the restaurant in the back. And now it's from each of our restaurants. Anyway, I would read them up here in the attic, and people would get one of our blood bags that we're kind of famous for, and sit and listen to my weekly story. And so I got quite a following, and then I approached my publisher, and they were just purchased by Pelican Publishing. History Press was, and so it's not a history, thing. And so Pelican Publishing is publishing it, but as a penny dreadful cookbook. So every chapter mentions just really slyly a little bit about a food, and then in the back is a recipe for one of the restaurants. And so that will be out. We're praying in October. I'm done, but my artist is still, she's on chapter 17, and there's 28 chapters. So they told me they need it now. And so I'm praying, I'm uploading chapters as she gets them done. And October would be a great release date. And we're going to have special book boxes that come with all kinds of cool stuff. One is an apron that's covered in blood spots with our logo on it, because it's a cookbook. A dream catcher, a sun catcher that is the lips from the cover. And our Misconceptions murder mix is a mosquito spray that is done here locally. That is amazing. It's all natural. You put it in your face. I put it on my dogs, and mosquitoes hate it, but it's like good for you. And anyway, so yeah, watch for that. If you go to my website, updates will be on there, and my Facebook.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. For the audience, make sure you check out. I'm going to provide all that information so you can go right to Marita's website, follow along all those cool things that are coming in the near future. So thank you for sharing that.
And there's going to be a sequel.
Sorry, go ahead.
There will be a sequel to Mosquito. It's called Mosquito Southern Vampires, and the sequel is this one's a cookbook, Penny Dreadful, which, by the way, it has the vampire legends, but it also has Lugaroo, which is our werewolf that lives in the swamps. It has witchcraft and ghosts. We have a lot of great ghost stories here, so there's some ghosts in it too. And the sequel is going to be a continuation of the story, but it will be a cocktail medicinal recipe book. So.
How unique and cool. That's cool.
Thanks.
That is definitely cool. Okay. The New Orleans Vampire, History and Legend. when your audience opens up the book and starts to read that, take us through a little journey. What will they experience?
I really wanted it to be like you're reading a secret document, and that's kind of the feeling I think it has. But it's a fun read. And then in the very end, I talk about my own vampire experience. So people always ask me, do you believe in vampires? And I don't. But having said that, I don't know. I had this experience here that was so remarkable. And I still think to this day that I'm going to see this gentleman again that came into my shop, that if there are vampires, this guy was one. So, you can read about that in the back of, it's the very last story in my Legends book.
Oh, that's exciting. See, that'll pull people in. That's pretty cool. So even you, who's done research and has looked at the legends and lore, you thought, if there is one, this guy's potentially one, if it's real.
It's really creepy. I thought about it the other day because, I tell that story sometimes and I don't really think about it, but that really happened and I don't really know what happened. It was really, really strange. Yeah.
Wow. You've talked about a few things. We've talked about Gasket Girls, Carter Brothers. I saw a character or a person, Comte Saint Germain.
Yes.
Am I saying that right? And can you tell us about that person?
So he's really my favorite probably because he was an actual person and he was very eccentric, very smart, also very concerned about other economies. He helped France's economy by bringing a way to put very vibrant colors into paint that he learned in Germany, all for free. He just wanted housing for his team. And while he was in England, he happened upon the London Opera House, and they allowed him to write an opera. This is just a man that walked in off the street, right? But he was such a good linguist and just likable and knowledgeable that they said, go ahead. And his opera became unbelievable. This was not the King's Opera House. This was the Opera House across the street. So that's a big part of the story. And anyway, whenever his opera played, his song played in this opera, it always got a standing ovation. It was like the most, reverenced thing. It's really crazy. So what's really weird about it is, and again, my research, I was psycho about this when I found out that the gentleman who ran the King's Opera House across the street retired, and he bought his wife a house called Four Queens Honor Row. And in that house, a famous muralist did all these murals. But on the entry, above the entry door, he did a mural of a music book opened up to an opera, and it was that opera by Saint Germain. And that never played at the King's Opera House. It played only across the street. And so for him to do that, right? And it was circled with the flower of eternity, and it was dedicated to him. So I said, it seems impossible, right? And so then I researched, and I found out that the home was for sale. I contacted the realtor and saw if I could get photos, particularly of that picture. And she put me in touch with the photographer, who then sold me a picture of that, and it's in the book. And I love it so much. I would love to have it redone. But all these little things in his life. And then it was also really remarkable that when he passed away, there was nothing left, nothing, right? But a little box, and only one person went to gather it. There was no funeral, which is almost impossible. And that's why there's so much question about his death and even his upbringing. He was raised by the Medici family, and it was because his father was being sought after by, war leaders. And so they gave him to him so he wouldn't be murdered. And that's where he learned all these talents. And I would love to meet him. So if you're still alive, come see me. Maybe that was him.
Maybe, right?
Yeah.
How
Do you
cool
want me
is
to tell
that?
you a little bit about that story, my vampire story?
I would love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love this story so much. I was in the shop and I used to, it was a stupid shop. It was my very first shop. It had a long carriageway that you had to walk through before you got to the door. And there was a big mirror at the end and you couldn't go any further. And then you had to turn in and go in the shop. And it was a dumb choice, but I couldn't find a shop. I couldn't find one. I finally said, let me just open. So my dog, my German Shepherd, worked with me every day. Her name was Elka. And she would sit at the desk, and we made our own candles. And the candles have little charms in them, so that they're called fortune candles. When you burn it, you'll find these charms, and they'll mean something to you because we ask you questions about yourself, and then we have hundreds pre-made. So I was pouring the wax, one layer of wax to all these candles. And when you're actually in the midst of pouring, it's hard to stop, right? So my dog, she never growled or barked at anybody. And at the time, she was like 12 years old. All of a sudden, she would always sit up and I would know that somebody came in. So she was standing up, growling, and I'm like, what the hell? And I heard a man walk in with a cane. And so I said, I'll be right there. I'm just pouring some wax, and the candles, I'll be right there. And she wouldn't stop. So I came around the corner and I stand by her and I put my hand on her head and I said, Elka, sit, stop it. And she never, the entire time this person was in the shop, never stopped growling. And that's what I was thinking about the other day. I never really took that seriously enough because she never once in her 12 years of life before that did that ever or ever after. So I'm standing with my hand on her head and the vibration, was going through my hand. So I was a little nervous and I don't really get nervous very often. And so this man, he was in his 40s, like kind of salt and pepper hair, dressed very nicely, nice physique, elegantly dressed, not like in vampire costume, but like tailored clothes, that was made for him. And it had a beautiful cane. And he ignored me completely. And when people walk into my shop, I always greet them and tell them most things in here are handcrafted by artists and all of our books are signed by the authors. We make a lot of our own products. He just ignored me. And then all of a sudden he turns and he says, in a Romanian accent, and I tried to think maybe it was Greek or Italian, but no, it was Romanian. He said, do you have the history of the vampire? And I said, no, because everything in here is signed by authors and I haven't found anybody who, that I know that's written that history. But that's a good idea. We should have it, and like I said, I was nervous. And then he said, I know people who'd be very interested in this. And that was it, right? And then I talked a little bit more about whatever he was looking at, and then he walked out. And on this side of the building were all windows, and my husband is 6'6", and he walks with purpose. He's like, I know when he's coming. And so he was walking out this part of the door, and I sat down, and I said to my dog, that was weird. And then, so he's walking this way now down the carriageway, and my husband's walking this way, and I see him, right? And so I'm like, okay, good, because he'll see this guy. So he comes in and I said, man, that was so weird. This guy that was just in here. He says, what guy? I go, the guy who just walked out with a cane. He goes, nobody just walked out of here. I go, the guy who just walked out. So I ran out. There was nobody. And we were in the middle of the block, right? Nowhere to go. No, I mean, it would be impossible. So I just got chills again. Like I said, I never really thought about it enough. I knew it freaked me out. And when I was working at the shop at night alone, sometimes the hair on the back of my neck would stand up thinking, he was walking in. It was really a crazy story. So if vampires exist, I have seen one.
Marita, I think you saw one.
I think so too.
That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you're right. I'm like hearing you. And even the conversation you had with him, that conversation, what he asked you and his accent, I don't know. Sounds like a vampire.
I know. It's just so, it was almost like my shop was a compliment to him and his kind. That's what it felt like. The whole time he was in there, it was like, wow, they built this thing for us, or about us. Like, it was so weird. Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, he might be coming back. Who knows?
I think he might. He'd be really happy now. I got a lot more to show him.
Right. Jeez. That's exciting. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to think. We've gone through a bunch of good questions, and I really appreciate you sharing all that you have. Trying to think if there's anything else. I think just naturally through our conversation, you've answered a lot of my questions. But I want to say, is there anything you would like to share or tell the audience about anything
I
that you
mean,
have?
I don't know. I just think I think people need to be more open-minded in general about the magic that there is in the world. I think it's ripped apart from us when we're young by our parents, by our teachers. Like the minute you're born, everything becomes so serious about, school and this and that. And it's all school about math and history and not about magic. And there's so much magic in the world. Like I'm actually keeping a journal, a magical journal, and I've given one to every one of my close friends. And I tell them to write all their magical experiences in the book. Because if you think back in your life, there are some things that are unexplained, and it can't be just coincidence. I'll just tell you one of these things so you know what I'm talking about. And I have a lot. I mean, I have a ridiculous amount that could be another like really big book. But anyway, this is just one, a very simple one. So I had a girlfriend who was older than I am. She was, I think, 65 when she was my friend, and I was probably in my 40s. Anyway, she was a bartender with me, and a lovely, just young soul. And she loved dragonflies, and she raised her granddaughter, her son's daughter. And her granddaughter, her name was Cheyenne. She was 13, but had been diagnosed, I think, when she was 11, with a brain tumor that was cancerous. And so it was a really devastating time for Diane, and Cheyenne ended up passing away. And then Diane while she was on her deathbed, she told Diane, because dragonflies would land on Diane's finger in her backyard, and she would tell Cheyenne that she was magical. And Cheyenne always wondered what dragonflies meant. So on her deathbed, she said to Diane, "I know what dragonflies mean. They show us the path." So Diane had a tattoo of a dragonfly with a little path behind it on her back. And so then Diane had her gallbladder out and died very unexpectedly overnight. Like it was a devastating nightmare. And so in New Orleans, we celebrate life. So we do I'm sorry, I get emotional. Hang on. We do a second line, which is a jazz funeral kind of thing. And I wanted to do one for her, and so did her family, but it was like too soon. You have to be ready for it. So we waited like a month, a little bit longer. And I talked to her sister, and her sister had these fans made up that had her picture on them. And I wanted to have dragonflies in it. So I went to Michael's and I bought a bunch of tooling and little like rods and some pipe cleaners. And then my friend Camille was sitting in my shop with me, and I had all this stuff between us. And I broke down, and I'm like, what do freaking dragonflies even look like? Do they have 4 wings or 2, And I had never seen a dragonfly in the French Quarter, because you just don't. There's no, unless you're in your backyard, probably somewhere. Anyway, the biggest dragonfly I've ever seen in my life. It was like this big. It was blue and green. Flies, the words just came out of my mouth. I said, what do they even look like? And this dragonfly flies in and lands on the materials that we're going to make these things out of, and sits there and looks at us. I mean, I can't even tell you. And I'm so glad Camille was there, because, I would have questioned myself, I think, and I don't think it was Diane. I think it was Cheyenne. I had this feeling, anyway. So all those little things in your life that are like that, you can bunch them all up. And when you start to think of it, you think of more. Like the other day, I just thought of one I had completely forgot about. And it just goes on and on. And so if we think about it, and also gratitude and manifesting, I mean, you can change not just your life, but so many other lives, and we need to let like the seriousness of the world go away and take magic more seriously. That's fun. That's fun.
I love that. And you know what? It's the perfect message for my podcast, which is everybody needs to look past the normal and see things we don't take the time to see, because I believe they're all over the place. And thank you for sharing some of that for us today. That's been amazing. Well, Marita, I've enjoyed our conversation. I want to thank you so much for being on today. And you've answered so many questions. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to talk about.
I think I'm done. Thank you. Yeah, just
It's
check
been
out Mosquito.
wonderful.
I'm really excited about it. It's kind of like a guilty pleasure. It's not a serious novel. Like my Carter Brothers novel is very heavy historical. Mosquito is Jake is my main character, and he's kind of a dog. And it was fun being in his head. It's the first time I've ever written first person present tense. And it was hard at first, but now I'm really glad I did it because you kind of feel like you're experiencing things with him. So I hope you like it. Yeah, watch for Mosquito coming out soon.
That is great. That is great. Well, I want to keep you on the line here for just a minute as I close down the show, and then we'll chat offline for just a couple minutes, okay? So as we wrap up today, I want to just tell everybody, first of all, I want to thank Marita for being with us today and sharing these wonderful stories, a lot about New Orleans for us, and help us to really appreciate and understand the things that happen in the historical background and backdrop of New Orleans. Also, some of the wonderful work that she's working on and those amazing places that she owns. So if you're ever in New Orleans, you got to check her out, check her places out, and go visit. But other than that, as we wrap up today, I just want to remind everybody that there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our universe, in our reality. So always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. Until next time, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.